Hello there. This is Emily Muse, producer of Education Insights Focus on Behavior and the Behavior Education Connection. We are so glad you're here today. We have a great episode in store, but before we dive in, we do have a favor to ask. We would love your help in spreading the word about our podcast. So if you have enjoyed the content here, please feel free to share our shows and episodes with others who might enjoy them, and to make sure that you are subscribed and liking our episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. We can't say enough about how much of a difference that makes in helping us spread the word, and we appreciate your help. So, without any further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Education Insights Focus on Behavior podcast. We're here to talk about all things behavior in the world of education. We take the science of behavior and break it down for educators into easily implementable steps, and we're excited to spend some time with you. Get ready to talk through behavior, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can all improve our work in schools so we as educators can be more fulfilled and our students can be more successful.
Hello, welcome back to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel Irwin. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
And Dr. Daria Lorio-Barston. Hi, Daria.
Hi, everyone.
And we also have with us our producer, Emily Muse. Hi, Emily.
Hello there.
So we're going to start out by playing a little game today. We're going to see how it goes. But the way the game is going to work is that Daria and Daniel are going to think of a word, and they're not going to tell each other the word. They're going to write it down. And I promise I will be monitoring that they are writing for our listeners, so no cheating. And when I say go, Daniel's going to say his word, and then Daria is going to say her word. And then they're going to think about how close they are to each other, because the goal of this is for them to say the same word. So based on whatever word one of them says and the other one says, they're going to then say another word. And again, they're going to write it down, because we felt like shouting it all at the same time probably wouldn't be very pleasant for listeners. But they're going to write it down, and then we're going to try to get to the same word. So we're going to see how this goes. And we'll start with our first word. So I'm going to give them just a half a second to write down their word. I'm getting a thumbs up from Daniel. Daria's good. All right. So, Daniel, what is your word?
My word is corn dog.
Corn dog. And Daria wrote?
Gymnastics.
Okay. So now based on that, we're going to do round two and see if we can get closer. They're also not allowed to repeat words. So that is one of the rules of the game. So Daria, you're not allowed to say corn dog, and Daniel's not allowed to say gymnastics. All right, Daria, we'll have you go first this time.
I had stand.
Daniel?
Sports.
Okay. So we're getting closer.
Daria said stand, like S-T-A-N-D.
Yeah, like a
Yes, like
corn
a
dog
stand
Like-
you
like-
can
like
get
a-
at a hot dog. Like a
All right,
banana
all right.
stand, but for hot dogs
Yep,
instead.
Yep.
I have to say, I think hot dog stands might be more ubiquitous than banana stands in our locality.
So far.
So far, we could change that.
If anybody is looking for some great new businesses to open up, that idea was free, folks.
Okay. All right. Are we ready for round three? Daniel?
Concession.
Daria?
I had fans.
Okay.
You had what?
Fans. Like the fans of
Fans.
sports.
Okay.
All right. Are you guys ready for round? What are we on? 4, 5? The next round. Daniel.
Spectator.
I had sport.
But he already said sports.
I thought he said concessions.
No, before that he said sports.
Oh,
I
Lord,
did.
see, I'm already messing this up. Okay, all right. Okay, so we're at sport, and Daniel, what was your word?
Concession.
S-
Concession.
No,
Oh, this time it was spectator. Sorry.
Spectator.
Okay.
All right. Daria, do you want to go? Oh, hold on.
I'm not
Daniel's
ready.
not ready.
I'm not ready. I'm ready.
All right, Daria.
Venue.
Daniel.
I went with bleachers.
Well, at least we're like in the same
We're
area.
getting closer.
We
Okay.
are, it's only a matter of time.
All right, it's going to happen this time. You all ready?
Yes.
Daniel.
Stadium.
Daria.
Seats.
I'm trying
Right,
to figure out how this is going to illustrate our point.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm not.
Daria. Oh, Daniel's not ready. Sorry.
Okay.
Coliseum.
Coliseum.
Whoa! We got there.
Thank you.
So, our listeners are probably wondering what in the world we're talking about today because this was an interesting game, but fun. You can play with your friends. Good news, you don't really need any materials, so that's awesome. So, what does this have to do with our topic for today? Well, what we're talking about today is shaping. And so, as we move into what shaping is, I want our listeners to kind of think about how Daniel and Daria started pretty far apart, right? Daria, you said gymnastics, and Daniel said corn dogs.
Corn
Corn
dog.
dogs and gymnastics. And somehow we got to Coliseum together. So let's start out with what is shaping?
Well, shaping is the process of systematically reinforcing closer approximations to a targeted behavior, right? So we define what it is we want to see someone do, what that's going to look like, and then as the student or the person we're working with shows or demonstrates behaviors that move closer and closer to what it is we're looking for, we're reinforcing them along the way. And so we can build any number of skills, whether it's a sequence of events or a singular skill, um, through shaping and sort of helping the person recognize and celebrate as they're getting closer, which, our activity sort of demonstrated, but also, it's a more systematic approach where we know what the end goal is, right? If we both knew the word was Colosseum, then we could get there, or if Daria knew, right, that we would get there. This was a bit of a play on that and sort of a messy one because we had to use a lot of inference and intuition, where shaping really sort of strategically and systematically breaks the skill down and you build sort of a sequence of skills to get there.
Yeah, I think our game wasn't exactly what I would define shaping as, but it's a nice kind of demonstration of how we start from one place and slowly and gradually move to kind of this in the terms of instruction to our target behavior that we're looking for. And I think that reinforcement is a really important point of that. And when we ask students to do something like, hey, I want you to solve a derivative problem in calculus. Well, as you're listening, I don't know how many of you are actually remembering how to solve a derivative, right? And but with a little bit of instruction, if you took calculus at some point, you probably could get there. And that instruction a lot of times does include, well, instead of just teaching you right away how to solve a derivative, first you need to learn these other skills to get there. And so we're going to slowly shape what that behavior looks like. I think a really easy example of this is something like throwing a football, right? Like I am not a professional football player. I don't know how to throw a football very well, but where you place your hands and how you twist your hand when you're throwing and where you put the ball, all of that can be shaped so that we can have an effective throwing of the football. Go ahead, Daria. I know you were going to say something.
Lena, yeah, another example that I think about when I think about shaping is the ice sculpture competitions, right? When everybody starts out with a block of ice and they know in their mind what the final sculpture is going to be, but it takes them a while to get there. So it's by kind of gradual chiseling and getting closer and closer approximations of their big idea does the sculptor go from a block of ice to a swan or a mermaid or whatever it is that they're shaping out of that block of ice. So I think that's the one that I usually jump to in thinking about how shaping very similarly looks like in the classroom. Not that we're chiseling anything in the classroom, but as far as moving from one approximation to the next successive one that looks even closer to the end goal, right? It's I think sometimes that visual helps me at least in thinking about shaping.
Well, and I think a really good academic example is writing a 5 paragraph essay, right? If that's our goal, we want students to be able to write a 5 paragraph essay with correct punctuation, grammar, varied sentence length, whatever our criteria are. We don't just hand students a piece of paper and say, okay, write a 5 paragraph essay. Or if we do, we have to expect they may not do very well at first. But instead, what we start is I'm going to teach you to write words. And we even start before that. I'm going to teach you how to form letters and then words. And those words then turn into sentences. And those sentences turn into a small paragraph. And that paragraph turns into a multi-paragraph paper. And we're correcting the grammar and the punctuation as we go along. And so we're ultimately reinforcing those smaller steps to get to that bigger end goal.
And I think one
So,
of the
sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
well, I just think, sometimes when we look at students that may need more specific or personalized or individualized shaping procedures, it's one of the things that's I think kind of easy to overlook or sort of not pay as much attention to is kind of the idea of really well defining very well what it is you're looking for, right? So if we take a class of kindergartners and it's the first day of school and these little friends have not done school before, so much of that is shaping from day one. I know nothing about school. I've got my big giant backpack on and my bus number, and I don't know where to go. To, as we're working through the school year, they're coming in, they're doing the unpacking routine, they're taking care of business, they're putting in their lunch order, they're building those independent skills. I think it can be tricky when we've got students who don't necessarily pick up on some of those things quite as quickly or need a little extra support. We know what it looks like when it doesn't happen, but what do we want it to look like? So we're all shooting towards the same goal. What does it really look like? We're not talking about what it doesn't look like necessarily. We get that. But what do we want to see the student do? What are our indicators of success? How are we operationalizing those behaviors so that if I'm in the classroom, I can reinforce the same things, use the same prompting, whatever. If it's an instructional assistant or someone else in the class, like everybody's looking for the same behavior, the same target behavior or kind of where we are in that shaping process.
And
And I
I
think that
think,
gets overlooked sometimes.
oh, sorry, Daniel. I was so excited. I started talking before you finished. Um, I think another really important consideration is making sure that everybody is very clear as to what that behavior is, as Daniel said, and we are not just reinforcing an attempt of the behavior, right? Because shaping is gradual, is getting us closer and closer to the final goal or the final behavior, the result, as we have operationally defined it. I think sometimes when we are not strategic and we think that shaping doesn't work, it's not that the shaping doesn't work, it's that we didn't consistently define what's the next behavior that's going to lead to reinforcement, as opposed to just merely trying to do it. So, Selena, if a student is able to write words, right? We are not going to reinforce a student just picking up a piece of paper and writing their name on it and stopping at that. That's fantastic. That's a great start, right? But if we already know that they are able to demonstrate success criteria for writing words, then that should be what we are strategically reinforcing. Or we need to have a plan how to stretch that shaping to go from writing words to potentially writing sentences. And I think that's an important consideration to make sure that whoever is working with the student is on the same page and clear about when that reinforcement happens.
That's a really important point because the reality is, even if we break skills like a much smaller skill. Like I just want you to be able to draw an A, the letter A. So at first, I just want you to hold the pencil correctly. And if you can hold the pencil, then you get reinforcement. Now, we're not staying there. If we stayed there, the student would never progress forward. But now I want you to just make any mark on the page, just a mark somewhere on the page with the pencil that you're now holding in your hand. Okay, now I want you to try to make as close of approximation to a circle as possible. Now we're going to make that circle look better. Now we're going to add the tail, and all the steps that go into it. But your point is, if we don't provide reinforcement consistently at each of those steps as we're progressing, then we're not going to see the progress that we want in that student.
And that's where you can kind of run into those things like prompt dependency and kind of waiting. Is that inconsistency that it doesn't just kind of slow down learning, but it also can like create some additional barriers if we're not really specific about that.
So why is shaping an effective strategy to use?
None of us are good at anything the first time. Although if I had a wish, this is one of my wishes, would be to be good at anything that I try the first time, but only if I wanted to be, right? Like I've got to be able to distinguish that. Otherwise, life wouldn't be challenging. It would be kind of boring. But if someone needed like open heart surgery on an airplane and I could be that guy, cool. Like I'll do that
I don't think that that's something you should attempt.
if I had my wishes. So,
I
So, Daniel,
understand. I understand what you're
so you
asking.
wouldn't send someone in for open heart surgery with the guy who just or gal or the person who just started their pre-med program, 18 years old, because they haven't been shaped to even understand maybe even how to hold a scalpel. So
Yes, but when the flight attendant says, "Sir, have you ever done this before?" You're going to say, "No, but don't worry."
I'm gonna
Daniel,
say you're not gonna believe this, but I had a genie and I'm choosing to use my
and
skill.
that's how Daniel gets removed off the plane.
By attempting open heart surgery on someone.
Oh,
Oh
also, I
man.
feel like your wish is really called a YouTube tutorial, Daniel. I feel like there's something in it
But not for
for
open heart
that.
surgery.
I
Yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah.
No,
yeah.
we're going to draw the line at medical
Um,
procedures here.
So back to the original question,
Yes.
is I think that shaping is really helpful as a strategy both for educators and for students, right? Because you are meeting the students where they are and you're stretching them just a little bit. I think about that, the zone of proximal development, right? You are moving it step by step. And it gives everybody a plan and it gives everybody an idea that this is doable because what we are asking to do is not a far stretch, right? So, Selena, I think about anything that we wanted to do professionally. If somebody said, okay, I know you're not a runner, but how about let's partner up and let's run a marathon and you can have as many stickers and as many lollipops at the end of it as you want. I'm not going to be able to do it because I wouldn't even attempt it because there's no way, right? However, if somebody said, okay, Dory, we're just gonna run to the end of the street, that's a very different behavior that I would consider, especially if there's a sticker at the end of it, right? And so I think that it is a useful strategy because it helps move the behavior fairly quickly, generally, in a way that feels very doable for the students and the educators as well.
And you're getting reinforcement all along the way. You want?
That's exactly what I was going to say. It just provides so many opportunities for reinforcement and celebration and seeing that progress. So especially if skills are taking a while, when you break it down in a way that's manageable and meaningful, and you're seeing that progress day after day, it makes it easier to sort of look back and say, well, 3 weeks ago, they weren't doing at all A, B, and C, and look how far we've come. And I think that can be really powerful because some of that shaping gets lost in the day to day, and it's hard to kind of look back objectively and say, yeah, we've come a long way, and we really did planning, and we really have been focused on helping the student be successful. And this is what we're seeing. You've got your check marks or your benchmarks kind of along the way for that skill, so that teachers can celebrate the great things that are happening.
Yeah, and we know that when we reinforce from some of our previous episodes, reinforcement really works when we see the behavior increase the likelihood of it occurring again in the future. If that doesn't happen, then we didn't actually reinforce. And by reinforcing, we're saying to this person, like, that's right, do that again in the future, and then you'll be able to access that reinforcement. And then we just shift the expectation just a little bit. We want it to stay attainable. We want it to be able to be something that the student can achieve, but we're going to make it just a little bit harder so that they can make progression in that skill.
Yeah. So to take this out, like to sort of zoom back out on this, I think, we're talking about individual skills, but when we look at kids who need, or who are really responding well and need sort of this really systematic approach to learning new skills or sequences of skills or tasks or whatever it is, um, or speech, right? It gives us the opportunity to provide all of that reinforcement and help kids be successful with whatever that is, right? So there's a piece of that that then makes them not only more likely to like kind of keep moving along this task, but be more likely to try new things or to sort of have the trust in the people who are providing that instruction or support, that they're not going to ask too much of me. And if they do, we'll figure it out, right? Like it's that idea of like we're it's is it a behavioral cusp? This idea that like our reinforcer window just keeps growing and growing because I'm willing to take more risks. I'm willing to try new things. We're building that kind of skill in as well, or sort of way of being, as well. It's not just sort of I'm teaching you how to unpack, but I'm also teaching you we can do this step by step.
Yeah, I think in other words, there are additional benefits to using that strategy, right? That all contribute to the positive relationship between you and the student, that also contribute to, as Daniel said, more students being willing to take more risks in the future, which I think are really valuable and important things to consider in the classroom as well.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I think we've kind of inadvertently made this point, but shaping is one of those strategies that works from kids from really, really little before we ever see them in school, all the way up through adulthood. Our behavior is shaped every single day as well. And so it's not an age-specific strategy. It's one that can be used for all children, all adults, for lots and lots of skills. So it's a really useful strategy.
It's the idea with being okay with perfection not being the enemy of progress. And if kids can learn that, then it can be a more self-directed activity, not always that reinforcer being sort of socially mediated and provided by a teacher. It starts to get into sort of personal habits of how do I move closer to my goal with the running, with the like nobody runs for stickers. You run because maybe at some point it won't feel as terrible and you'll be able to breathe easier. Um, but the idea that it doesn't have to start with a marathon, it doesn't have to start with a 5K. It can start with getting out for a walk. It can start with standing up and what, right? Like it's the idea that we should be okay with that. And when we map it out, then we've got a path and off we go.
And I think that, as Selena said, right, is you can use this with anybody, any age. I would like to add in any content area as well, right, across all content areas, whether you're teaching social skills, whether you're teaching academics. And to Daniel's point, when we talk about kids, this is also something that we can do and shape our own behavior as adults in the classrooms too, right? So if you're one who likes to reflect on your own practices, and if the lesson didn't go quite as planned or quite how you wanted it to go, well, there's an opportunity for you to think about what can you do slightly differently in the future to get to a different result. So I think shaping is a really valuable strategy for students, for adults, across all sorts of contexts.
Yeah, and I really like Daniel's comment about don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. And shaping is a really good strategy. Let's just get started. Let's take that first step, and then we'll get to where we need to go in the end. But the task doesn't have to seem so big in the beginning. So with that, I think that brings us to the end of our content for today. But we do have our resource of the day, and I think Emily is going to be the one who shares that today.
I am. So, our featured resource for this episode is the Searchable Video Dictionary that's available on the CBIS website, www.cbisva.org. Click on resources and video resources. And in the video definitions, in addition to a video for shaping, which we also have many, many other terms defined. And all of them have a downloadable and printable flashcard of definitions, examples, ways to increase understanding and fluency with language surrounding behavior. So if you have not been over there to check it out, please do. And if you have been, we would love to have you back.
Yes, thank you, Emily. And I will just add all of those videos are a minute or less, or your money back. So, with that, we are wrapping up our episode today. Thank you, Daria and Daniel, for your time and sharing your expertise.
Thanks to you and to Emily and to all of our listeners.
It's always fun. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Emily, for sharing our resource and for keeping us grounded.
Thank you.
and we will see our listeners on our next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can join the conversation by emailing us at cbis@odu.edu, visiting www.cbisva.org, or following us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky at CBISVA. Special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for their support of this project.